Hey scholars, this is a lecture video that goes with the chapter 8 on PowerPoint. I mean, that goes with the chapter 8 PowerPoint presentation on relationships. So I recommend obviously reading through the PowerPoint, looking at the PowerPoint as you're listening to this video. And as I mentioned before, you can always play the video at a higher playback speed on YouTube. You go to settings or options or whatever, and then you can try it at 1.5, 1.75, whatever works for you. You get through the video in a much more quicker time. Okay, so uh, on to slide 2. There's so much information that this textbook covers, and in some classes you would have an entire class on interpersonal communication. And you'd have several chapters dealing with the nature of relationships. But in our course, it's more condensed, and so there's just one chapter, one specific chapter on interpersonal relationships. So slide 2, there's two kinds of relationships. So sort of oversimplify things. There's relationships of choice and relationships of circumstance. So if you watch that, if you like the movie Forrest Gump, watch that quick video clip from Forrest Gump, and you'll see the way that Forrest initially met Jenny. She met her through a circumstance. So the relationship started out as a relationship of circumstance. It just so happened she had an extra seat on the bus and he sat down. And that's kind of how life is a lot with relationships with circumstance. You just happen to be somewhere, happen to be in the same class as someone, or there's someone who's a coworker. That's a relationship of circumstance. And oftentimes those become a relationship of choice in the sense of, when I had a lot of coworkers at restaurants I worked at, every relationship I had was a relationship of circumstance. And there were only a few people, or there were like a handful of people that I became good friends with, where I would like hang out with on the weekend. And then even after we quit working at the restaurant, we remained friends. That was a choice. It wasn't my choice that they were my coworker. That doesn't mean that your coworker doesn't mean that they're your friend, but it's a relationship. Your siblings, a relationship of circumstance. Your parents, relationship of circumstance. Classmates, professors, all circumstance. Now, if you intentionally go up to someone, you're interacting with people, and you just know certain people in a social circle, you initiate conversation. You intentionally, strategically try to initiate conversation with someone for whatever reason. That's a relationship of choice. Anyways, it's just important to know the difference between the two. On to slide 3. So I abbreviate. So instead of writing out interpersonal, I just write IP. So close interpersonal relationships are illustrated by higher degrees of interdependence. And interdependence means that me and someone else, so you and someone else, you are highly interdependent. You're interdependent on each other, meaning if it's me and you, it's like I depend on you and you depend on me. If it's my son or daughter, you could say that's an interdependent relationship where they're more relying on me, but I also depend on them too to cooperate and to get along and to do what I ask them to do. So there's a high degree of interdependence there. With your coworkers, that's high, like, or let's say a business partner. If you have a business partner, that's a very, very highly interdependent relationship. My actions, my behaviors affect the other person, and so on and so forth. So that's interdependence. So the higher the independence, the closer the relationship. Doesn't necessarily mean it's positive, but it means that you're close. Close doesn't always mean good or positive, but close means that you're connected on a tight level, significant level. Oh, I was just mentioning slide 4. So slide 4, parent-child relationships, romantic partners, coworkers. So I mentioned the example of restaurants and bartenders, and the way I would describe let's say a relationship between two bartenders, and this is from my own personal experience. So I was a bartender at a restaurant for a while. Super fun job. I was a restaurant that I had already worked at the restaurant as a food server for a couple of years, and then once I turned 21, the bar manager said like, "Hey, Jonathan, now that you're 21, would you want to work in the bar?" And I said, "Sure." And I said, "Why are you asking me? All these people here, they chose me, and he liked me. He liked how I worked and all that kind of stuff. He knows I'm had a lot of integrity and all that kind of stuff." But anyways, I said, "Sure." And I started doing little things here and there, and then I started working in the bar a lot, and it was so much fun. But I would call that a symbiotic relationship. In other words, my actions and behaviors affected Mark. Mark was the main guy that I worked with. So me and Mark worked together, and it was like the way we worked together was almost like a song and dance. It was like a dance where um, if I stepped on his feet, he'd feel it, and it would mess things up. So we had to like work around each other in a way that just was functional. We're in a tight space, right? A very narrow space in the bar. We're making drinks. We're washing dishes, washing glasses, serving our customers, doing the cash register, running to the kitchen to get food. I mean, it was busy. It was so much. It was very, very, very busy. But I say symbiotic relationship, and if you ask what that is, I have a little excerpt from a relationship between an anemone and a clownfish. So think Nemo, Finding Nemo. The anemone provides the clownfish with protection and shelter. The clownfish provides the anemone nutrients in the form of waste. Well, blah blah blah. Right? You can read more. You can Google that if you really want to know more about that. But the point is, it's an analogy to illustrate the nature of interdependence and symbiotic relationships that we have with certain people in our lives, such that my actions really affect. Let's say with my bartender example, my actions and behaviors really affected Mark, and so on and so forth. He was not older, but I was 21. He was close. He was late 30s. So he would say like, "Hey, have you do the heavy lifting, and I'll make you work more, and I'll do other things." So he benefited from that, and then I would just run more. I would just do a lot more physical labor, but then I also learned from him. The benefit was he had more energy and he was able to do other things to focus on, but then he would teach me things. So we had this mutually beneficial relationship, and hence high level of interdependence, symbiotic, etc. All right, on to slide 5. So I always like to really emphasize the nature of attraction in interpersonal relationships. And attraction, a lot of times we think about attraction, we think about romantic attraction. And within interpersonal relationships, there's so much more to attraction than just a romantic attraction toward the person. So I'll talk about 7 types of attraction to give you more of a comprehensive overview of attraction. I'm on slide 5. I have that acronym or the acrostic or whatever you want to call it on the bottom, press fit, as just a way to remember all the different types. There's I don't know, it just kind of has a ring to it. Press fit. Physical, relational, emotional, sexual, social, fatal, and task. So physical attraction is the degree to which you find another person's physical qualities attractive, and it could be romantic. It could be I might look at someone's like an athlete. You might look at an athlete and you're just attracted to that. That's different than romantic attraction. You might look at an athlete and the way they're dressed, the way their body has been shaped from all their work, and think about like the Olympics and all the different shapes and sizes of bodies based on the sport and the different body types, or like you go to a fashion show and you might say like, wow, that person looks so attractive in that outfit. I find their physical attributes, their overall physical appearance, I find that very attractive. Sounds a lot like romantic attraction, but it's different. It can be completely neutral and not sexual or romantic whatsoever. Obviously related in some ways. Then there's relational attraction. And relational attraction is the degree to which you want to have a relationship with someone. Whether it's a friend, a family member, a coworker, whatever. It's just like, I want to have a relationship with this person. This person seems like they'd be a good friend, right? I'd want to rely on this person for things. Relational attraction. Excuse me. There's emotional attraction, which is the degree to which you're attracted. You might find yourself attracted to a person because they seem to meet your emotional needs. There's certain people in your life that you've talked to, and you talk about your emotions, you talk about your feelings, you talk about things, and it's like, man, they have all the right words to say. They're always responding to you in the ways that make you feel so good. You just leave that conversation like, wow, my emotional needs were being taken care of, and so on and so forth. It almost felt like therapy. Now that's the kind of person that maybe you don't have a relation, like a long-term relationship, and maybe you don't have a relational attraction to that person who you have an emotional attraction to. In other words, well, I don't necessarily want to be that person's friend. I mean, I'll see this person once in a great while, and we don't have like a significant relationship other than once in a great while we talk, and then my emotional needs are being met. Or you can meet a complete stranger. You probably had, maybe you had an interaction before where you meet a complete stranger, and somehow something personal comes up, and then you hear this like this kernel of wisdom, this nugget of knowledge that they give you. They talk to you about something. You share, oh, I'm having a bad day, and this is what's going on with my job, my kids, my girlfriend, my boyfriend, whatever. And then they go and talk to you, and they give you this like pearl of wisdom, and you're like, oh my gosh, like you just had this emotional attraction, right? Because they did such a good job of attending to those emotional needs. And maybe you never see the person again, right? Still an attraction. Um, so it's just, I'm clarifying, it's a little bit different than just interpersonal attraction. Like interpersonal attraction is so broad, and I'm talking about all the different types of the different unique types of attraction. And then there's sexual attraction, which is pretty straightforward. Sexual attraction is the degree to which you want to have some sort of like sexual relationship with another person, engaging in some sort of sexual act with another person. Different from all the other ones, obviously. And then there's social attraction, which is the degree to which you want to socialize with someone. Sometimes you're with that person who's just like the life of the party. They're really fun, or they're really funny, or they're engaging, and you just love being in their presence. Maybe you don't want to have a relationship with them, right? Maybe you don't really have a relational attraction to them. You're like, well, I don't really see myself being friends with this person, but man, when we're out like to parties and we're out in public or whatever, I just love being around them. They're just so fun to socialize with, and maybe I only see this person, once a year. Then there's fatal attraction, which the name is a little bit misleading. So fatal attraction has to do with the degree to which the initial quality that attracted you to a person, oftentimes in a romantic relationship, but it could be a platonic relationship. It could be a workplace relationship. It could be a business relationship where it's like my client or my customer, like it's my business and it's my customer, or vice versa, or business partner or whatever. But fatal attraction is dealing with the degree to which one of the initial qualities that initially attracted you to the person over time now becomes the quality that is repelling you from that person. It's killing the relationship, hence the term fatal attraction. So, for example, it might be something like, hey, the reason why I really like hanging out with this person, or I'm dating this person, is because they have such an amazing sense of humor. They're so funny. They make me laugh so much. Ha 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 ha. And then 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later, you realize, man, they're just never serious, right? Their sense of humor is what attracted me to them initially. It's what I fell in love with this person because of their sense of humor, or I went into business with this person because of their work ethic, or fill in the blank, right? There's some sort of a quality that attracted you to them, but then it's so extreme and it didn't change over time, and now you're having not second thoughts, but now you're seeing the relationship from a different set of lenses, a set of lenses that basically sort of compartmentalizes, like, yeah, there is that initial quality of sense of humor or work ethic, but earlier my vision was completely clouded by that, and now I see things differently. And basically, they're never serious, right? They're always joking. Every time I try to have a serious conversation with this person, they're being sarcastic, they're changing the subject, they're being goofy, right? So that now is killing the relationship, fatal attraction. Or the work ethic. The work ethic is what attracted me to this person. But all this time later, they're even more dedicated to their work, and now it's like their whole life is work. They're married to the job. All they do is talk about work, etc. They're always on their phone. They're always doing this. They're always doing that. It's all about work. That's killing the relationship, hence fatal attraction. So that's one you want to be cautious of. In other words, if you're so attracted to a person, romantic, non-romantic, whatever, because of just one quality, it's just like one overarching quality, and it's so powerful. You're like, they are so funny. They are so generous. They are such a hard worker. They are whatever it is. Be cautious, be mindful, and maybe check yourself before you fully commit to that kind of a relationship. And then there's task attraction. Task attraction is great. So task attraction would be the degree to which you find a person's like work ethic attractive. So the way that you see a person do their job. Now, let's say you're a manager. If you're a manager, you're going to be watching your employees. Let's say you're managing several employees and they're doing their jobs. You're gonna be looking for employees that you have a high task attraction to. In other words, you really like the way they do the job because they're following directions, they're doing it the right way. You know how it's supposed to be done. And this person over here, man, they're so good at their job. They don't just do the bare minimum. They go above and beyond, and they're so good at it. So I'm attracted to that quality of the person. I'm not so much attracted to the person, but I'm attracted to that quality of the person. And as a manager, that's the kind of person that I'm going to go after in terms of like promotion, or if I need something, or if he or she's the kind of person I can rely on for certain things in terms of how they're going to do their job. Anyhow, so that's task attraction. Definitely something you'd want to have with someone if you're going to go into business with a person. Um, if you're going to go into business, if you're choosing a business partner, I would say my opinion would be that you definitely would want to have a high level of task attraction. Because if I'm going into business with someone and I don't like the way they do their job, I'm criticizing the way they do the job, like I wouldn't do it that way. I think that's inefficient, that's ineffective, yada yada yada. There's no task attraction there. That could create a lot of turmoil and ultimately lead to the dissolution of a business. So that is a very, in my opinion, comprehensive overview of attraction. All right, let's move on to slide 6 on intimacy. I have some notes on the PowerPoint slide. I have some of these slides have notes, and I'm not sure how many, just a few, I think. So the way that we feel about relationships is understood in nonverbal channels. Obviously, you talk to people, you say things like, I like you, you're a good friend, I love you, and so on and so forth. Those are words that we use, but the way that we really understand the nature of the overall interpersonal relationship is understood in nonverbal channels. And so intimacy is a big component of how we feel in a relationship. And intimacy is something that we experience when we feel liked, accepted, understood, cared for, or loved. So regardless of what someone says, if someone says, I like you, I accept you, I understand you, I care for you, and I love you. Well, they can say that, but we need to feel that way. So how do you, if that's how you really feel about someone, how do you basically act in a way such that they'll feel the way that you say that you feel about them? Easier said than done. So let's talk more about that. So how do you communicate intimacy and liking? Well, there's a variety of ways. Physical, psychological closeness, approachability, sensory stimulation, interest, and personal warmth. These are all qualities that we want to have. That's how, like, if someone exudes these qualities, then we feel liked by that person. So think about the chapter on interpersonal, on nonverbal communication, when we talked about immediacy cues and how we use immediacy cues to communicate to a baby or infant that they're loved, or how to do well in a job interview. So that's a review from chapter 5 on nonverbal communication. This is continuing that conversation, but now we're specifically just talking about interpersonal relationships. So if I want to communicate intimacy to someone, if I want to let someone know that I really like them, that I love them, and I care about them, I'm going to try to basically emulate these behaviors to create that psychological closeness, to be approachable. You probably went up to people and talked to people. You probably approached people before, and they didn't seem very approachable. They seemed cold and distant, and it seemed like it's almost like me talking to this person was a burden to them. That's the opposite of approachability. Sensory stimulation, let's say, like, a handshake, like a hug, like the way that they use their voice, all that kind of thing. Interest. If I show interest in you, if you're coming to talk to me, and I show that I'm genuinely interested in what you have to say. Obviously, I could try to fake it, but I think you generally if I'm interested, right? If I'm focused on you versus I'm looking around, looking at my phone, looking at my watch. I look impatient when you're talking about the details of whatever it is you're talking about. You pick up on that. You don't have to be a communication expert to know when someone seems like that you're putting them out or something like that. Interpersonal warmth. There's just people that you talk to and they're just warm. You know what I mean? They're just like, I feel like I can give this person a big giant hug and I just feel really good when I'm around this person. Leaning forward, eye contact, expressive voice, all those things. When you're doing those things strategically and in a way that's positive, we experience intimacy and liking. So think about slide 8. Think about how you feel when someone's passively engaged in a conversation. So I'm talking to you, right? Or let's say you're talking to me, right? You're talking to me, and you're opening yourself up, you're being vulnerable, and all of a sudden you just perceive that I'm completely disengaged. I seem like I'm checked out, even if I'm looking at you, even if I'm not looking at my watch or phone or looking at the TV. If you just perceive that I'm checked out, I'm disengaged, like think about how that makes you feel. And I use a term here, when you perceive a fellow interlocutor, that's just a technical formal term for a person who's involved in a conversation that you're having. I just use that term because that's a formal technical term. I'm a formal technical person, so there you go. The point is, you get angry, right? You get upset, and this is a good conversation to have in a classroom, like a physical classroom. So the kinds of interaction that this, or the kind of discussion that this stimulates is people say, like, I feel like it was a waste of time. Like I'm opening up to someone, and then all of a sudden they just seem checked out. Well, it's a waste of time, and then all of a sudden the next thing they say is like, oh, sorry, I don't remember. What did you say? I wasn't paying attention. It's like, oh my gosh, it took me so much to open up to you, and now I'm realizing you weren't paying attention. So it makes me not want to do that again. So um, sometimes you just need to tell someone, hey, can you just pay attention to me right now? Can you just give me your undivided attention? Phone off, turn your watch off, TV off, like, hey, you and me. And it'd be nice if someone did that on their own, but sometimes you just need to remind people, regardless of the nature of your relationship, romantic, non-romantic, work related. Sometimes you just need to tell someone, hey, I have some important things to tell you, or I want to share some stuff, and I really want you to pay attention. Hopefully, if it's a person that you know and trust, hopefully they'll say, like, okay. And then you're probably more likely to have them pay attention to you. Okay, more on intimacy and affection. On to slide 9. So there's a difference. There's a difference between intimacy and affection. Intimacy is a property of relationship, so you have different amounts, different levels of intimacy. You feel more intimate or less intimate at different times of your relationship. And then affection is a property of individuals. We feel affection towards other people in our network. We feel so we feel affection with other people in our network. They're very, very similar, but I can't necessarily communicate intimacy. I can communicate affection. So if I'm communicating affection, and if I engage in affectionate behaviors, it increases the level of our intimacy. So that's the relationship between affection and intimacy. So you can express affection directly or indirectly. One way to do it directly, hugging someone, right? A hug, a kiss, modifying your voice, engaging in facial expressions that will show that affection. So every time when I drop my kids off at school, or I say goodnight to them in their room, I give them a hug, I lower my voice, I tell them I love them. Those are very direct forms of expressing affection. It can also be done indirectly. So you can express affection indirectly. So doing a favor for someone, like doing someone's laundry, giving somebody a ride to work, right? Assuming it's someone that you like, it's someone you care about, that you love, etc. Maybe you're not a touchy-feely person. You're like, I don't love the hugging, kissing, all that kind of stuff, modifying my voice, saying things like, I love you so much. Well, you should try to consider doing that. But even if not, you can still do favors. I mean, you can still express affection indirectly. There's a variety of ways that you can do that. So doing a favor is definitely, one way to do that. Helping someone out in some way, shape, or form. On to slide 10. So why do I put so much emphasis on affection? It makes us feel good, right? At the end of our lifespan, the things that we tend to care most about are the nature of our relationship, how we lived our lives, how we connected with people who matter most to us. We don't like when we're dying, when we're retired, when at that stage of our life, we're not thinking, I wish I would have had more education. I wish I would have had more money. Generally, we don't think that. That's what the research shows. So there's a book written by a scholar named Corey Floyd. So Corey Floyd is an amazing communication scholar, and he writes a lot about relationships. And he wrote a book called The Loneliness Cure. You can watch. There's like an actual trailer for the book, like a movie trailer, but it's a book trailer. It's a bit it's a bit tongue in cheek, kind of kind of contrived and syrupy with the acting in there. But if you watch this book trailer, you'll get a sense of what the book is about, and you'll hear Corey Floyd talk about why he wrote the book and whatnot. But he's an excellent scholar. He has more than 100 publications, book journal articles, book chapters, books, and so on and so forth. So he's very well known and well respected, like nationwide, worldwide, within the field of communication. And then he wrote the book called Loneliness Cure. So you can look at the book on Amazon and just look through the chapters. This is what I do in the classroom. I look at all the different titles of the chapters and then basically talk about like each one. It's not an assignment or anything like that, but it's kind of, we just look at the titles and we generate some discussion. But I recommend looking at that. Slide 11. This is a clip that I showed in a previous PowerPoint slide. So communicating affection is not always textbook. This was also done when we were doing perceptual or perception checking. So the way that we actually communicate affection, when we get to that point where we're in a relationship and maybe you feel like, man, I feel like I'm supposed to communicate affection right now. It's not always textbook, right? And then when Harry finally tells Sally how he feels, they finally confirm each other's perceptions, but this is him communicating affection. So I'd recommend, watching it again if you want. There's all kinds of theories that have to do with relationship dynamics. Slide 12. There's social exchange theory, uncertainty reduction theory, social penetration theory. So the social exchange theory, the textbook talks about it. In short, I'll oversimplify it. So one way to make sense out of social exchange theory is it's a mathematical formula, right? Where you have rewards and costs. And in a relationship, you should have more rewards than costs. So let's say you get a sheet of paper. You're in a relationship with someone, and you're thinking about the relationship, and you're assessing it. So let's say from a mathematical perspective. So on one sheet of the paper, you number 1 through 50. On the other sheet of the paper, you number 1 through 50. And on the one side, you say rewards. On the other side, it says costs. So what are the rewards of being in this relationship? You write down as many as you can that you can think of. And what are the costs? You write down as many as you can think of. And at the end of all that writing, you have two lists. Let's say the costs are 20. You have 20 rewards and you have 10 costs. What happens when you subtract the costs from the rewards? You still have 10. You have positive 10, right? And this is simple math. I'm going to do a little bit of algebra now. If you have 10 rewards and 20 costs, and then you subtract the costs from the rewards, you have 10 minus 20. What do you get? Hopefully you know, it's basic algebra, negative 10. So that means there's a negative relational outcome. So you have your rewards, let's say, on a sheet of paper, let's say that's your paper, you write rewards and then costs, and you put the line down, the little subtraction. And if it's a positive number, the more positive, the more positive larger number, the more significant or the more greater your overall relational outcome is. The greater, larger negative number, the less satisfied, the worse off the relational outcome, because the outcome is the mathematical outcome, right? The more negative it is, negative 5, negative 10, negative 30, that's more negative than positive 10, positive 20, positive 30. So that's one way to think about relationships. It's an exchange, right? In any relationship, there's going to be rewards and costs, but hopefully you have more rewards than costs, because if you have more costs than rewards, you're going to be paying for it. It's going to be more negative than positive. So it's up to you how you want to manage that relationship. We've already talked about uncertainty reduction theory. I won't go over that again. And then social penetration theory is the one with the onion metaphor. And I use the clip from Shrek. So if you look at Shrek, watch that Shrek clip from slide 13. He talks about, Shrek and Donkey you're talking about. So Shrek is trying to explain what an ogre is like. Donkey's trying to figure out, Shrek, hey, what are you all about? What's an ogre like? I think this is like a perfect illustration for social penetration theory. Whoever wrote this particular scene, my guess is that they had a great understanding of social penetration theory. Anyhow, so Shrek's saying, hey, if you want to understand me, you got to think of me like an onion. There's layers to onions, and there's layers to me. In human relationships, not in film, in human relationships, that's how you think of me, is like you're trying to get to know me. Well, think of me like an onion. And I have so many layers, right? If you cut an onion open, you might count maybe 6 or 7 maybe 6 or 7 layers of the onion, maybe 8, depending on the size of the onion. But if you were to take like tweezers and or like a certain kind of a tool, you could, for each like chunk of the lemon, there's several sub layers, right? So there's the big chunks of lemon of onion, and then within each of those, there's several fine layers. Think about relationships like that, or think about people like that. Um, in order to fully understand someone, you have to penetrate all those different layers of the onion to get to the core of the onion, the core of the onion, the core of me. That's the part of me that I don't share with a whole lot of people. It's the most intimate, the most personal, the most private. Hey, maybe in my life there's only a few people who know about that part of me, but the only way you're going to get to that part of me is through removing layer by layer by layer of those layers of onion. And the wedge that gets through that, there's some textbooks will show a diagram where there's a wedge breaking through those onion layers, and the wedge is communication. The wedge is communication. The knife, whatever metaphor you want to use, the communication is what is getting through to those layers. It's like breaking the barrier of the layer, and now okay, here's a new layer. More communication, verbal communication, nonverbal communication, waiting, patience, time. Right? It's not going to happen overnight. It usually takes a significant amount of time to get from the outermost layer to the innermost layer. Outermost layer, things like, oh, what kind of food do you like? I like pizza. So do I. Great. Okay, that's the outer layer. And then the next layer, what kind of pizza do you hate? Ooh, gosh, I don't know if I want to tell people about pizza I hate. That's another very outer layer. But as the information becomes more sensitive, more personal, more important, and so on and so forth, or as you get through layer by layer, you're getting to those different levels of information about a person. And this is what's called self-disclosure, right? So slide 14. Self-disclosure is providing personal information to the people that they wouldn't know if you didn't tell them. So that's the whole point of the social penetration theory is it's all about self-disclosure. It's how people self-disclose in a relationship. The 3 characteristics I want to talk about with self-disclosure is reciprocity, appropriateness, and risks. So the authors talk about self-disclosure in detail in the textbook, but I'll just tell you about the most important ones that I would say I want to highlight. So reciprocity, meaning there's a reciprocal property in self-disclosure. I self-disclose something to you, then I expect you to self-disclose something to me in kind, meaning at the same level. Let's say I'm on a first date with someone, and then I start talking. We're talking, we need to know each other, we're having an awkward conversation for a while, and then at some point I disclose something like, "Oh, I'm gonna change my major to history. I've already changed my major twice, but it's been my dream to be a history professor, and I wanna that's what I want to do, and I'm gonna change my major to history." That's self-disclosure, right? And I would expect the other person to say something around that same level, whether or not it has to do with a major or something like that, right? A career goal, right? I would expect something on that level. If I shared about how I wanted to become a history professor and so on and so forth, and the response I got was, "I like butter on my bread," it's like, okay, well, that's not reciprocal, right? Yeah, I guess that's self-disclosure, but that's like the outermost layer. That's like the onion paper, right? For those of you who know about food. In other words, it's not that significant, and it certainly doesn't match what I said about my desires for changing my major and how I want to be a history professor. It's my dream, and blah 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 blah, right? So that's a component of self-disclosure. Reciprocity. Appropriateness, pretty straightforward, right? Especially as you're getting to know someone, the expectation is that you are appropriate with what you self-disclose. You need to be mindful of what you say and think about what you say before you say it. Hey, self-disclosure is me revealing things, so should I tell a person that I like I have a criminal record? Well, yeah, at some point, but timing is also a component of self-disclosure. Timing is more related to appropriateness. At some point, I need to tell you that I have a criminal record. It probably shouldn't be the first thing that comes out of my mouth. And maybe that's not the best example of the criminal record. Depends on what the criminal record is. Like, oh, I got caught stealing candy. That's what the criminal record versus I stole a car and served time or something like that. The point is, like, there's all different levels of appropriateness. this, and you need to be mindful of how and when and why you're disclosing different things. Because if you disclose things that are very inappropriate, it can shut the relationship down. It can make the person feel very awkward or strange or maybe even frustrated. So be mindful of that, of appropriateness. And then risks. Basically, there's always a risk in self-disclosing, right? Especially as we're getting through more layers of the onion, so to speak. As I get through more layers of the onion, and then I start revealing things about, let's say, politics, right, or my views on things like climate change or like even like cars. Like if I might feel so strongly about cars, and you feel strongly about cars, and all of a sudden we realize, oh wow, our interest in cars are just like completely opposite. Whether it's that or culture or religion or music, right? Even music's one of those things where if you tell me, maybe you get to the point you start talking about music, and we're already, and things are going kind of well, like, hey, we're having a great conversation, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, like we talked about so much, what kind of music do you like? And then you start telling me, and I think, oh man, I hate that music. Oh, I hate that music, and the people who like that music, oh man, can't do it, right? I can't be in a relationship with you because of the music you like. I mean, maybe, I mean, that might sound a little bit far fetched, but it's certainly reasonable that there are certain topics, there's certain components to a person's individuality and their uniqueness, such that the differences are enough to separate the relationship. So that's a risk, right? One of the risks is you never know how the person's going to respond. So that's self-disclosure. All right. And then there is slide 15, strategic topic avoidance. So the authors talk about this concept of strategic topic avoidance. And so in a relationship, whether it's a blind date or first date, business lunch, you're at a networking event, it's not always romantic. I mean, a lot of these chapters are written in books like this. It's always, I think a lot of people just assume they're talking about romantic relationships. That's part of it, but most of the relationships that you have in your adult life are not going to be romantic relationships. They're going to be business relationships and coworker relationships and manager or supervisor supervisee relationships. So sometimes people ask you a question, and it's an inappropriate question, right? So it's within self-disclosure, like that's not appropriate. Hey, how much money do you make? You might meet someone, you're at a networking event or you're at a social function, you go to your, maybe it is a romantic relationship setting, such that I'm at my girlfriend's family's house and I'm meeting her family members for the first time, and someone says, so I heard you have this job. How much money does that pay? And you might think, I don't want to, regardless of how much money it pays, maybe your view is like, I don't want to talk about money. I don't want to talk about how much money I make. I don't think it's anyone's business. So how do you strategically avoid that topic? You could be direct and say, that's none of your business. You could keep silent. You could pretend like you didn't hear. You know, someone says, how much money did you make? And you're like this. You're like, oh, hey, where's the restroom? You know, you like maybe pretend like you didn't hear. You change the subject. You give an unrelated response. Someone says, hey, how much money do you make? And then your response is, did y'all see the Angels game last week? You know, you bring up a new topic. And if you do it the right way, and you're very strategic about it, like, you don't want to be passive aggressive. If someone asks me an inappropriate question, I don't want to be like, okay, anybody see the Angels game? Because then it'd be pretty obvious, right? It would be fairly obvious that I'm aware of what this person asked me and I got frustrated. And now I'm trying to change the subject. That's passive aggressiveness. Whereas if I'm strategic in my facial expressions and tone of voice, I can make it look as though it's almost like an indirect way of saying I'm shutting you down, but I'm also saving face because I'm not trying to embarrass you. I don't want to embarrass the person, but I'm also not going to answer the question. I don't have to answer the question. Think about it like this. As a human being, as a grown-up, you don't have to answer questions that people ask. Oftentimes people ask inappropriate questions and we just feel this like urge to answer. You don't have to answer. I mean, if you can't think of something creative and strategic to say, you could say, I'd rather not say, or you can just walk away, or you know, there's something. But You don't have to answer the question. Just because someone asks you a question like, oh, sorry, how much money do you make? Or they ask you a question that's too personal, you don't have to answer the question. You could walk away, or you could just say, I'd rather not say. I'm not going to answer that question. But if you say that's none of your business, then it becomes more combative and it can lead to passive aggressiveness and verbal aggression. But you can be completely neutral and completely calm and not give them what they want, right? Just because they want to know that information about me, I have no obligation to tell you. I do this a lot, right? People ask questions or they bring things up, and in my head, I think about what they said before I respond, and I'll either do some sort of strategic topic avoidance, or I walk away, or I do something that basically gets me out of answering the question. It's a skill. Think of it as a skill. Easier said than done. So slide 16. So the authors talk about all these different relationship stages. I'll just talk about two of them: initiating and terminating. So everything in between, like you initiate a conversation, you initiate a relationship, you first meet someone, right? And then it develops into a romantic relationship or a friendship, and then you go through all these stages. Think of it as like a staircase model. That the hardest part might be getting that on that first step. You get on the first step, and then there's all these other steps that take place, and it's just you spend more time together, you talk differently to each other, you share things, you maybe move in with each other. There's all these different things that happen in between. But the first step can be so difficult. Making first contact, it can be very challenging. So the question I have to you is to really think about and ponder, like, why do you think it's so difficult for some people, in some cases, to make that first contact, or confusing and awkward, right? So think about how this differs with romantic encounters versus friendly encounters, platonic encounters. Maybe it's not romance at all, but you're at a networking event. I keep saying networking event because as young professionals, one of the ways that young professionals develop a business and develop a reputation is by going to networking events and getting to know people and introducing themselves. And that requires you to walk up to someone and make that first contact. So I was a pretty funny video with Jimmy Fallon and President Obama. This was a few years ago. It was like right before President Obama was finished with his term. So just watch the clip and hopefully you see how it's related to what I just talked about with making first contact. It's hilarious. I mean, I think Jimmy Fallon is quite funny. Okay, slide 17. Terminating. So there's all kinds of strategies for ending a relationship. One of them is called ghosting, and I'll talk about that in a second. And I'm sure most of you have heard of the concept of ghosting. And there's another concept called grave dressing. There's all types of things to consider when ending a relationship. So there's post-interaction effects. So how you end the relationship, it does matter. Like in person, a note, a letter, how you do it, that matters. So it's best to choose a strategy and approach that's going to be in the best interest of both parties involved. So grave dressing is something that you do after the relationship. In other words, the relationship ends. Let's say you're in a long-term romantic relationship, or it could be a business relationship. My brother was in a business partnership with his friend for several years, and then their business partnership dissolved, and then they were no longer in business together. My brother continued keeping the business, and his former business partner went on to pursue a different career. So over the years, my guess is that people would ask, both persons, my brother and his former business partner, they would ask both of them, like, "Oh, whatever happened to the two of you?" And I don't know what they would. I don't know how they responded to that. I haven't asked them, but you'd want to have grave dressing is basically a response that is making both people look good. It's not that you have to like praise them. It's not like you have to like talk about them so highly, but you're basically giving an account for what happened, an account for how the relationship ended, where you're preserving sort of their reputation. You don't have to necessarily compliment them, but you're preserving the reputation. It's not an opportunity to throw them under the bus. And that happens a lot. Oh, whatever happened to the two of you? Oh, he was such a jerk and he cheated on me and blah, blah, blah. I was a liar, yada, yada, yada. It's like, geez. That's not healthy. whether or not it's true, but it's not healthy, and it's not grave dressing. And I'm explaining grave dressing. So grave dressing would be, think about a tombstone, and there might be an inscription of like that person's life and how they died or what the kind of life they lived. It's a way to dress the grave. So think about a relationship. When a relationship is over, you can think of it as like being dead, right? It sounds kind of gruesome, but like the relationship no longer exists. It ceased to exist. So grave dressing is basically giving a story. You're attaching a story to that. So that way, whenever someone asks you, like, "Oh, whatever happened to the two of you?" you have this sort of like almost like uh, uh, a memorized sort of just response, 30-second response. We saw things differently and decided it was in our best interest that she moved back to her own hometown and I moved back to my hometown and end our romantic relationship. I mean, there's a variety of ways that you can do that, but the idea is I'm not going to be talking about what I liked or disliked about the person, but I'm preserving their reputation. I'm not going to throw them under the bus, but it's also an easy thing for me to just sort of pull up from my Rolodex of, of thoughts and whatnot. Because, hey, if I've been with a person for several years and then, I have all these connections with this person, they know me as me and this other person, me and her, not just me. And they know her as her and I, not just her. So over the course of several years, you might run into people, you probably run into people, they're like, "Oh, I haven't seen you for a while. Hey, how are you and so doing?" "Oh, we're no longer together." And instead of it turning into this weird, long, awkward thing like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I know it's horrible." You say, like, "Yeah, we're no longer together." "Oh, really? I'm so sorry." And that's when you say the grave dressing, right? You have your almost like an elevator speech. You have your 20-second, 15 to 30-second response to when someone says, "Hey, whatever happened to the two of you?" That you have grave dressing. So hopefully, in that grave dressing, hopefully you don't talk about ghosting. Let's go to the next slide on ghosting. So ghosting is something that a lot of people do. Most of you, I'm guessing, most of you have heard of it and are aware of it. And me talking about it right now is not an opportunity. I'm not using this as an opportunity to shame anybody, but rather to inform you and enlighten you about what it is and what the research shows. So I recommend either now or in the next few minutes, watch this video on slide 18. If you watch that video on ghosting, it says ghosting, the missed warning in the back of the dating manual or something like that. So they talk about ghosting, and it's almost like kind of comical the way the guy's talking about it, the way the narrator's talking about it. But it's not. I don't think it's intended to be funny, because a lot of people have been very much damaged by ghosting. So what the research shows is that in most cases, ghosting does far more damage. It does far more harm than good in the long run. So ghosting is a non-breakup, it's a non-conflict style. And there's a variety of different, several different varieties and forms of how one would ghost someone else. So in many cases, like let's say a textbook ghosting experience would be, I'm dating someone and I at some point decide I don't want to date this person anymore, right? We've been together for a certain amount of time. Let's just say we've been dating for a few months. We've gone on several dates. We've spent some time together. Maybe I've met that person's friends and coworkers and so on and so forth. But maybe our relationship is not like extremely serious, and everyone has a different level, has a different understanding of what extremely serious means, right? But we're together, right? We're a couple, we're a relationship. I haven't made any like formal commitment, but we're together. And then I decide I don't want to be with this person anymore. So then I delete their contact information from my phone, block their number, I delete all their all the connections that I have with them, let's say on social media. So if they're on if they follow me on Instagram, or I follow them on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, fill in the blank, I delete all those, I block them. Basically like erase our entire history, and I make it so that the person can't get in touch with me. I become a ghost, right? That's where the term comes from. I become a ghost to them. And so there's a variety of implications that this leads to. If you look at slide 19, so this is one of those things that I want you to do on your own. It's not a homework assignment that you're going to turn in. But again, this class is one of those classes where I would say like this is a class that's a requirement, but it's an opportunity for you to understand who you are as a human, the nature of your identity and the nature of your relationships and how you interact with other people, because these things really matter. So I would say this is something that you would, I would recommend watching this video, the ghosting video from slide 18. Watch the video with like a friend, someone that knows you well and someone who you can trust, someone that you can be vulnerable with and talk to. Because these kinds of topics, these kinds of questions and topics lead to like really like significant and intense conversations. Intense in the sense of like not combative or aggressive, but it's like it's dealing with heavy stuff. Heavy is a better word than intense. It's dealing with heavy things. So the question is, what are the implications of ghosting? What are the consequences of ghosting? And think about it from the perspective of the ghostee and the ghoster. So if you're the one doing the ghosting, so whether or not you have any experience doing this, direct or indirect, more than likely you have some sort of indirect experience, meaning you have a friend or you know of someone who either did the ghosting or got ghosted. I will say this as a side note. What the research shows about ghosting is that in some cases, in a very small amount of cases, ghosting is your best option. Like if you have someone who is stalking you or someone who's posing threats to you or they're being obsessive and it's just unhealthy, then yeah, it might be in your best interest to ghost that person. But that's in rare cases. In some cases, someone who is acting that way and they're being obsessive and whatnot, ghosting that person might aggravate the person and might make the person go crazy and might make the person turn on you. And I'm not saying this to scare you, but just to eliminate the fact that when we don't get that closure, it like our brains need that. Our brains and bodies need that closure. We need something. We need to know that the relationship is over, and we need to hear it from the other person, even if it's something. Even if it's the last thing I want to hear. The last thing I want to hear is like, I think we need to end our relationship. Let's take a break. Let's break up. I don't want to hear that, but I need to hear that. If you're going to end the relationship with me, I need to hear that. Most people would prefer to hear that. Most people would agree, like, yes, I need to hear that. They don't like the way it sounds, but it's much better than being ghosted. Because the people who are ghosted, they generally feel a sense of obviously they feel betrayed and they feel confused. They don't have closure. What did I do? What did I say? Oh my gosh. Now I'm going to be very apprehensive about the next relationship I'm in or the next person I date. And then the person who did the ghosting, like think about what the short-term implications is. Well, that was easy. That was the easiest breakup I've ever had. I just deleted everything. And the fact that I got away with it, it reinforces my behavior to do that again in the future. But some of the long-term implications, it would be something like I might feel guilt, right? I did it. Maybe I'm not a bad person. I don't know how to end a relationship, so I just ghosted the person, and it took care of the problem. And then several, maybe months later or years later, I hear about that person, right? Or I run into the person, and I just have this immense amount of guilt and anxiety that I did something so horrible, so toxic. Or maybe my boss hears about it. Maybe somehow my boss finds out that I ghosted someone in a relationship. And maybe my boss sees that and my boss thinks, well, even though it's a romantic relationship and you work for me in a different fashion, it stands to reason that the way you deal with problems, like if you're going to deal with a problem like that, then it stands to reason that the way that you might deal with problems in our organization might also be incompetent or toxic. So does that mean I'm going to fire you? Maybe not, but now I think differently of you. Again, I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty or anything like that, but I want you to understand. I want you to like have an understanding of the consequences and implications of something like ghosting. So I would say talk this through with someone if you want. What are the implications of ghosting? How does it make you feel in the short term if you're the one ghosted or if you're the one doing the ghosting? What are the lingering effects, the long-term consequences from both perspectives? And then think about how social exchange theory is exemplified by ghosting. The costs and rewards. So if you're thinking about it, here is a strategic communication, critical thinking approach to how you might end a relationship using a theoretical context, social exchange theory. On one sheet of paper, you write rewards, and the other side of the paper, you write costs, and this all has to do with ghosting this person. So what are the rewards with ghosting the person? And then what are the costs with ghosting the person? In all likelihood, the costs will probably be far greater if you're being honest. If you're being honest. So that's something that's like your homework assignment for your own, self-help sort of perspective approach. So that was a lot, and there's still so much I didn't cover from chapter 8. It's a big chapter. We're talking about the nature of human relationships, interpersonal relationships. It's a very complex topic, very fun topic to talk about as well. Hope you're all doing well. Talk to you later. Bye.